Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you so much, Mr. Tan Sri Michael Yo, President of World Digital Chamber, distinguished guests and ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very, very much for such a distinguished award. I was very surprised. I still do not feel that I've fully earned the title or the spirit of the award yet, because my work is just started and not really finished yet. But I'd like to share my appreciation that technology is now being considered not just as a way to make money or to make multi-million-dollar startups, but technology is really the solution with which to unleash the human potential in every socioeconomic class, especially in the developing world. And I think that Indonesia is a really great example of technology in action. When I started Gojek, I was obsessed with the idea of how technology can actually level up people that were not given the chance in the normal world, in the non-digital world, to show what they are capable of. When I saw the motorcycle taxi drivers in Indonesia and I interacted with them, I realized that they had so much greater potential than what they were being utilized for. And so technology in that situation became a massive enabler, an enabler for them to earn, an enabler for them to gain trust from customers, an enabler for them to do so many more tasks and skills than most people would assume that they were capable of. And I think that that's when I began to realize that technology, which is now permeated across every socioeconomic level in Indonesia and in ASEAN and in everywhere else in the world, I mean, within a decade or so, every single person, no matter what income class, will probably have a smartphone. And I think that we're well on our way. So we must assume that that access is soon going to be quite universal. Of course, there's areas in the world that still don't have access to internet, but that is rapidly changing with all the new technologies that are happening. So at that point, I realized at the step change that technology can have, and that technology ended up employing more people, enabling more micro-entrepreneurs than many government institutions. And that really inspired me to think, okay, what's next? So when President Jokowi asked me to become a minister, I did not know that it was going to be for Minister of Education. And I thought that I was going to, because the idea of joining government coming from the private sector is a very, very tough decision. There was a big probability that I was probably going to say no, and I hated that conversation because I loved what Jokowi was doing for the country. But when he said it was for education, that was probably the one government cabinet post that I could not reject. And the reason is because the baseline one was so low. The state of education that we were in was essentially in crisis. Not many people realize that, but we had a literacy crisis, we had a numeracy crisis. Our PISA scores were stagnant and not commensurate with our economic growth at all. PISA is the global index of educational achievement. And so the first instinct that I had was, okay, what are the probabilities that I'm going to make this worse? That was the first thing that I asked myself. Secondly, what would I be able to tell my daughters when they grew up? What do I prefer to tell them? Do I tell them that I turned this position down because I was too scared to fail? Or, in the scenario, would I prefer to tell them, I did this task and I pretty much failed, but at least I tried? And I realized that the answer was very simple. I would much greater regret being not a good role model to my daughters and telling them that, because the challenge seems impossible, the challenge seems so big, that I didn't undertake that challenge. So the courage to do something in the face of failure is something that I would like to impart to my kids when they grow up and understand exactly what I'm doing. Right now they're 3, 4, 5, 6 years old, so they still don't understand. I took what I learned from the technology industry into government. I applied together with an incredible team. I applied the user-centric design principle. And this is a very subtle principle, but transformational, I believe. Before we decided to build anything in the area of technology for schools, for teachers, the first thing we did was not decide what they needed, but ask them, what are your biggest pain points? What keeps you up at night? What is taking away time from teaching? What do you stress about day to day? And based on these answers, then we started developing technology products to support them. If some of you are from government or have dealt with government, you would realize this is a very counterintuitive approach. 99% of the approaches of governments will be, this is what I want these people to do. I'm going to build a technology tool to make them do it. And that's the recipe for products that are never used. Because if you are not solving that user's problem, you will not be able to get them to adopt it. So, what kind of products did we build using technology, using that user-centric design? We built a super app for teachers because teachers said that they don't like to learn from academics or from, very intellectual textbooks about teaching, etc. Teachers want to learn from other teachers. So we created a platform where teachers could share their best practices. This platform is now on the Android store with a very, very high rating, higher rating than most unicorns. And it is used by over 2.5 million teachers in Indonesia sharing best practices. When we launched our new curriculum, what we call Curriculum Merdeka, a curriculum that was student-centered, much more flexible, allowed teachers to catch up students that were falling behind. We had 300,000 schools, 3 million teachers. There was no option. We had to use technology to get them to move and learn to the new curriculum. Otherwise, it would have taken a decade to do it manually. So technology for us was not a choice. Technology was a mandatory, the only way that we could actually get our curriculum to be adopted. So we did something quite counterintuitive. For the first time in Indonesian history, we didn't force our schools to adopt the curriculum. We just did something very simple. We gave them a choice. We said, sure, you can stay with this old curriculum that you've been complaining about, or you can go on our app, self-register, and it will give you a step-by-step tutorial on how to implement the new curriculum. Within 1 year, guess how many schools signed up? Over 70% of schools opted in to the new curriculum. That's the power of choice, the power of agency, when you accompany it by access to information using the app. For the schools that didn't have connection to internet, didn't have the equipment, etc., we provided a hardware box, delivered it physically so that they could use laptops even without any internet connection, and all the materials were there. So we developed this system with understanding of the limitations of the system as well. Not only that, we developed an app for principals who are constantly complaining about the bureaucratic burden of having to report financials, how they use their government money to spend. So we created an app for them to automatically reconcile and report all of their spending, which cut hours and hours that they could be using to mentor teachers, what their real job is, instructional leadership. We created a massive movement of mover teachers. There's now 100,000 mover teachers who are really changing the mindset of learning, how to implement the growth mindset in teachers and both students. These master mover teachers are the ones that will become the next principals and superintendents. So we created a platform by which every single district would know who these teachers are and to be able to recruit them directly to put them into principal positions. We created an e-commerce platform for schools to shop online so that schools in Papua and Maluku could access the same goods and services as schools in Jakarta and Surabaya. So this is the essence of user-centric design. It is about solving pain points. It's not about making people do what you want them to do. It has to be a combination of both, to be honest. But you must first provide solutions that address their pains. And the impact to this has been massive. Over 70, now 80% of schools have adopted the new curriculum. There's over 150,000 uploads by teachers on this platform, each sharing their own best practices. And it's been one of the most culturally transformational initiatives in the whole history of education in Indonesia. And thank you. It's a silent revolution too, because to be honest, in the media, education is not necessarily the sexiest subject at all. Nothing human related, human capital related is ever newsworthy. Not health, not education. But some of the biggest transformations you're seeing in Indonesia are in these two fields, I can assure you. They're silent revolutions that require every teacher to switch on and really identify what is my purpose as a teacher. And once you do that, they become lifelong learners. And that's what we've learned. And the only way to do that at scale is through technology. So, thank you very much for the award. It is truly an honor. I'm sorry that I couldn't have more time to have a much more deeper discussion. I'm off to seeing the president after this to discuss a few topics. But I'd like to, once again, send my gratitude for this award. I will try to earn it very much.